The banners of House Baratheon still hung heavy in the Red Keep, black and gold, flapping over the courtyard where Robert's voice had once roared with laughter and command. Yet now, those same courtyards rang with silence, disturbed only by the tramp of northern guardsmen and the hushed whispers of courtiers who dared not speak too loud. For the first time in generations, a king sat not upon his throne, but behind iron bars. Robert Baratheon, the usurper who had won his crown with a warhammer and rage, now paced within a dungeon cell. His once proud body had grown heavy with drink, his temper as wild as ever. But the chains that bound him left no doubt. The Wolf of Winterfell had judged him guilty of treason. It had not happened in a single night, but in 1,000 small moments of mistrust. Robert had threatened Daenerys Targaryen's life from across the narrow sea, speaking of assassins sent to slay a girl. He had grown careless with power, more a drunk than king, squandering the realm's gold and ignoring the small folk's cries. For Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Hand of the King, there had been a line he could not cross. The breaking point came when Robert, in a fit of rage, demanded the heads of children. "Do you hear yourself, Robert?" Ned had said in the council chamber, his voice heavy with frost. "You would kill babes in their mother's arms. This is not justice, this is madness." Cersei Lannister had smirked from her corner, enjoying every fracture in their old brotherhood. "Our noble hand speaks treason to the crown," she said, sweetly. "What punishment fits that, my king?" But Robert had laughed then, though his laugh had been bitter like a stag wounded in the wild. "Treason? No, Ned speaks as he always has, with honor chained around his throat. Honor will choke him in the end, and yet it was not Ned who choked. The turning point came days later. Robert struck Sansa Stark across the face in a drunken fury for speaking kindly of her betrothed Joffrey. The blow had left her cheek purple, her tears staining the hall floor. That single moment broke something deep within Ned. He could endure his own suffering, but not the abuse of his blood. That night he gathered loyal Northmen, men who had ridden with him since the rebellion, and moved against the king. The arrest had been quiet, but brutal. Robert, drunk and unarmed, had not expected the betrayal of his oldest friend. The clash of steel echoed in the royal apartments as the king's guard tried to resist, but even Ser Barristan could not fight an army of northerners in tight corridors. Robert had bellowed like a beast cornered, cursing Ned, cursing the North, cursing the Seven themselves. And yet, in the end, he was dragged to the cells beneath the Red Keep, iron shackles locking his wrists. "You dare!" Robert spat through, broken teeth glaring at Ned from the shadows of his cell. "You dare call me traitor, I who won you this realm? I who bled and killed while you hid behind honor?" Ned stood silent, his face hard as Winterfell stone. "You betrayed the realm with every drink, with every whore, with every order that would see babes slain. You betrayed the trust of the people who call you king. This is not the realm you swore to protect, Robert. You are no king, not anymore." Those words hung heavy in the torchlit dark, a death knell for the friendship that had once shaken kingdoms. Outside, whispers spread, faster than wildfire. Some said Ned Stark meant to crown Stannis Baratheon, the king's dour younger brother, as rightful heir. Others claimed he plotted to place his own blood on the throne, marrying his daughters into power and claiming the Iron Throne for House Stark. The Lannisters seethed, their pride stung, and Cersei whispered poison into her son Joffrey's ear, telling him that the North had stolen his crown. The realm itself shivered, sensing storm and winter at once. The stag had been caged, but a caged beast often fights fiercest. And in the dungeons, Robert swore vengeance, not just on Ned, but on every man who dared chain him. That's the first part. Do you want me to continue with part 2, where we explore the fallout in King's Landing? The Lannisters' scheming, Stannis and Renly's reactions, and how the realm fractures under this shocking act? The small council chamber had never been so tense. The air was heavy, the candles flickered with every hushed breath, and no one dared move too quickly, lest they be accused of treachery. At the head of the table sat Eddard Stark, no longer simply Hand of the King, but the man who had placed the crown itself in question. His grey eyes looked upon the lords assembled, though his thoughts were already leagues away, with his children, hidden within the keep. Varys, with his hands folded and a false smile painted across his pale face, broke the silence first. "What a curious turn of events, Lord Stark. Never in my long life have I seen a king dragged from his chambers in such a manner. The people whisper already. They wonder who rules them now. Perhaps you might care to enlighten us." Ned's jaw tightened. "Robert Baratheon rules no more. He is guilty of treason against the realm and against the honor of his own crown. Until his lawful heir is crowned, the Iron Throne is empty." Cersei's laughter rang sharp across the table, a lioness's mockery. "Lawful heir? My son is heir? Or have you forgotten, Stark? Or is it that you would see your own pups on the throne instead?" At this, Peter Baelish leaned forward, eyes glittering like daggers in torchlight. Now, my lady, surely Lord Stark means to follow the law, and the law declares Stannis Baratheon the true heir, does it not? Though one wonders, would dour Stannis inspire loyalty in the capital? He is as loved as a plague in summer. Ned did not rise to the bait. The throne belongs to Stannis. It is his by right of blood, and it will be his once he is called. Cersei's face hardened. "I will see you flayed before I let that man wear my husband's crown. Joffrey is king. He will sit the Iron Throne. And if you believe otherwise, Lord Stark, then you are more a fool than even Robert thought you." The room trembled with unspoken threat, but Ned's voice remained steady, the voice of the North, where law was older than kings. "Joffrey is no true heir, and we all know why." His eyes lingered on Cersei just long enough for the venom to sink in. For a moment, the chamber froze. Only the shuffling of Varys's silks and the faint hum of Baelish's amusement broke the silence. Then Cersei rose in a storm of emerald skirts, her pride wounded, her face pale with rage. "You will pay for those words, Stark. You have chained a king, but lions are not so easily bound." She stormed from the room, her guards trailing like shadows. The council broke soon after, each man retreating to his own schemes. Varys vanished, into whispers, Baelish into smirks and shadows. Ned stood alone in the chamber, staring at the Iron Throne beyond the great doors. For the first time, it looked less like a seat of justice, and more like a wound that bled the realm dry. Beyond, the walls of the Red Keep King's Landing boiled. Word spread through the streets like wildfire. The king was imprisoned by his own hand. Some cheered, saying Robert had long been a drunkard who cared little for his people. Others cursed Ned Stark's name, calling him traitor and usurper, a northern wolf come to steal a southern crown. Riots began to spark in Flea Bottom, small fights breaking between those who cried for Stannis, those who shouted for Joffrey, and those who simply wanted Robert restored. But the true storm brewed, not in the city, but across the realm. At Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon received word with cold satisfaction. "At last the fool has undone himself," he said, his lips curling only slightly at the news. "The throne is mine, by law and by right. Ned Stark has merely hastened what was inevitable. The lords of Westeros will rally to me or burn." At Highgarden, Renly Baratheon was less restrained. He laughed, pouring wine as he spoke to Loras Tyrell. "My brother locked away like a common thief. The realm is weak, Loras. A weak realm needs a king the people will love. And who better than me? Handsome Renly, kind Renly, the king who smiles. The lords will choose me over dour Stannis, mark my words." The Lannisters, meanwhile, gathered like wolves in the west. Tywin Lannister, upon hearing his daughter's ravings, summoned his bannermen. "The North believes it can chain kings. Then let the North see what lions do when caged. We will march. We will tear down their wolf lord brick by brick until even the snows of Winterfell are red with blood." Back in King's Landing, Robert Baratheon sat alone in his cell, drinking from a cup of sour wine smuggled in by a sympathetic guard. His laughter was bitter, echoing off stone. "Ned Stark, my oldest friend, you think you've won, but you've doomed us all. The realm will bleed for this, and in the end, they'll remember Robert Baratheon as a king wronged. They'll curse the name Stark long after the snows melt." And in his heart, Robert swore he would have his vengeance, even if he had to break the realm in two to claim it. The Raven Wings carried chaos across Westeros. By the time a fortnight had passed, the Seven Kingdoms no longer spoke with one voice. The realm, once bound by Robert's rebellion, now splintered like a shield under too many blows. In the north, the Lord stood firm behind Eddard Stark. House Manderly, House Umber, and the mountain clans swore their loyalty, though not without unease. Some questioned why their lord would meddle in southern crowns at all. "The North should care for the North," Greatjon Umber growled across Ned's table in Winterfell's great hall when the news reached Robb Stark. "Why risk northern blood for southern folly?" But Robb repeated his father's words. "Justice is not folly. When kings betray their oaths, someone must hold them to account." And though the lords grumbled, they bent the knee, for loyalty to Winterfell was older than the Iron Throne itself. Far to the east, Dragonstone stirred. Stannis, Baratheon, hard-faced and merciless, sent forth his letters. He declared Robert unfit, Joffrey a bastard born of incest, and himself the rightful king. His words carried weight. Law was the stone on which he built his claim, and no man could deny the truth of it. Yet love and law were not the same, and the lords of Westeros were slow to rally. Still the seeds were planted, and Stannis sharpened his fleet like a sword yet unsheathed. Renly, however, chose charm over law. At Highgarden, he courted the Tyrells with honeyed words and promises of glory. Margaery Tyrell, young and beautiful, became his betrothed. "With her at my side," Renly told his allies, "the Reach will follow, and half the realm with it." And indeed, the Tyrell banners soon flew alongside the stag of Renly, a crown of roses blooming around his cause, but the greatest fury belonged to the lions. At Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister's summons went forth. Gold flowed like a river, paying sellswords, bribing lords, feeding an army vast enough to darken the western hills with banners. "The wolf has dishonored the crown," Tywin said coldly to his council. "He has insulted my blood and caste. His lot with Stannis. Then he shall taste the wrath of lions." Jaime Lannister, reckless as ever, laughed at the thought of war. "Let me ride for King's Landing, father. Let me free Robert myself and cut down Stark in his own hall. I'll put his head on a spike before the gates, and we'll see how long the Northmen howl after that." But Tywin shook his head. "Patience. The wolf has caged the stag, but in doing so he has set the lions free. Let him sit in his council chamber and choke on honor while the realm burns around him. When he tires, when the lords turn from him, then we strike." In King's Landing itself, the city teetered like a ship in storm. Riots broke in Flea Bottom as factions brawled. Stannis men, Renly men, Robert loyalists, even those who demanded. Viserys Targaryens returned from across the sea. The Goldcloaks struggled to keep order, their loyalties uncertain. Some followed Ned, others whispered to Cersei, and still others sold their blades for coin. Ned himself felt the weight of it. Daily, from the Red Keep's windows, he watched smoke rise from the city as hungry small folk raided bakeries and corpses piled in alleyways. "I sought justice," he told himself. But justice seemed a frail thing against the tide of war that now loomed. The worst came one night when assassins crept into the Tower of the Hand. Steel flashed in the dark, and 2 of Ned's guards fell before the third raised alarm. The killers were slain, but one bore the crimson of House Lannister beneath his cloak. Cersei's message was clear: the lions would not wait long. And in the dungeons below, Robert roared like a beast in chains. Word reached him of the chaos above, and his laughter shook the stones. "See, Ned," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the cold halls. "See what comes of your damned honor. The realm burns while you sit in silence. Let me free, and I'll smash their skulls myself. Give me my hammer, and I'll end this before it begins." But the keys remained beyond his reach. Ned visited, once more standing in the torchlight outside the bars. Robert's eyes burned with fury, red-rimmed from wine and rage. "You've torn the realm apart, Ned. You think you've saved it, but you've doomed it. Stannis and Renly will not bend to each other. The lions will bare their claws, and the North will bleed for a war not its own. Is this the justice you sought?" Ned said nothing, but the silence was its own answer. The realm was breaking. The stag was caged, the lions restless, the brothers at war, and winter itself creeping ever closer. All it would take now was the first true clash of swords, and the 7 kingdoms would drown in blood. The first battle was not fought in the name of thrones, but in the name of pride. It began when Jaime Lannister rode with 500 knights under the Lannister banner toward King's Landing. Officially, they were an escort, a show of strength meant to guard the crown during the confusion. In truth, Jaime meant to free Robert with steel. The small folk whispered as his column thundered down the King's Road, red and gold banners snapping in the wind, the Kingslayer smiling as though he were riding to a tourney instead of treason. Ned's scouts brought word swiftly. In the council chamber, he stood stiff-backed, the others gathered around him. "The Lannisters march for Robert. They mean to tear him from his cell by force. If they succeed, the city will burn before the week is out. Then meet them on the road," Petter Baelish said smoothly, his lips curved in a half-smile. "Let the Kingslayer bleed the cobblestones red. It will do wonders for the city's peace." Varys tilted his head, the soft hiss of his robes filling the silence. "But beware, my lord. Should Jaime fall, Tywin will not forgive. He's a patient man, but when lions are robbed of their cubs, they do not sleep, they devour." Ned's eyes hardened. "If war must come, let it come with honor. I will not let the Lannisters dictate the law." That night, the Gold Cloaks and Stark's Northmen took position at the city's gates. When Jaime arrived with his knights, he found steel waiting. "Stand aside, Stark," Jaime called out, his golden hair gleaming in torchlight. "You've caged a king, but you will not keep him. Hand him over, and I'll let you keep your head." Ned rode forward, grey wind at his side, the direwolf's growl low and deep. His voice carried across the still night. "Robert stays where he is. Turn back, Jaime, before you doom your house." The Kingslayer only laughed, drawing his sword with a flourish. "You always were too serious, Stark. Perhaps a little blood will loosen you." The clash was sudden, brutal. Steel rang against steel, shouts echoing against the city walls. The Gold Cloaks fought unevenly, some holding firm beside Stark, others faltering when faced with Lannister gold. Ned himself was unhorsed, fighting knee-deep in mud and blood. Jaime cut through men like a dancer, golden lion gleaming with every strike. But for every knight he slew, 3 more pressed in. The Northmen fought like wolves, savage and unyielding. When dawn broke, the ground before King's Landing was a charnel pit. Hundreds lay dead, red and gold tangled with the black and grey of wolves. Jaime Lannister was dragged back alive, a broken sword in his hands, blood across his face. He laughed even in chains, spitting at the Stark men who bound him. "2 kings in chains now," he jeered, his voice hoarse. "What will the songs call you, Stark? The jailer of Westeros?" Inside the Red Keep, Robert heard of Jaime's capture and roared with laughter until his chains rattled. 2 caged stags and lions. Ha! By the gods, Ned, you've lost your wits entirely. This will bring Tywin down on you like a storm. And Robert was right. At Casterly Rock, Tywin received word of his son's imprisonment, his face, usually stone, cracked with fury. They dare chain my blood? His voice shook the hall, and his bannermen swore vengeance. The west stirred with fire and steel. Thousands of men called to arms. Tywin's war had begun. Meanwhile, in the Reach, Renly's star rose higher. With Margaery at his side, he marched. Beneath banners of green and gold, a crown already upon his brow. Lords flocked to him, charmed by his smile, hungry for his promises. The people need a king they love, he told them. Not Stannis' iron law, nor Ned Stark's cold honor. They need joy, hope, a realm reborn. And they believed him. At Dragonstone, Stannis ground his teeth as he read the tidings. Fools, he muttered, the realm dances while law is broken. They crown children, liars, pretenders, while the true king waits. So be it. I will build my fleet, and when I strike, none shall doubt who rules. In the north, word reached Winterfell of the bloodshed. Robb Stark sat in council, his young face hardening with every raven. My father fights lions in the south, while the realm tears itself apart. If war is to come, the north must stand ready. The lords roared their approval, steel ringing in the great hall. Winter was coming, and the north would not be caught sleeping. Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark stood in the throne room. Before him, Robert sat chained, and beside him now, Jaime Lannister also shackled. 2 prisoners, 2 great houses brought low. The Iron Throne loomed above, a jagged crown of steel, and Ned felt the weight of it heavier than ever. Varys's whisper echoed in his ear, soft as silk. You have caged kings and lions alike, my lord. But tell me, can even a wolf hold back? The storm forever? Ned said nothing, but in his heart he feared the answer. The Iron Throne stood empty. It had been weeks since Robert's imprisonment, weeks since Jaime's capture, and still no king wore the crown. The small council squabbled like vultures over a carcass, each man pushing his chosen heir. While outside, the walls of the Red Keep, banners rose in every direction. It was in this chaos that Tywin Lannister struck. The west moved with frightening speed. 20,000 men poured from Casterly Rock and the Golden Tooth, sweeping through the riverlands like a tide of fire. Villages burned, crops blackened. To ash and charred corpses swung from trees along the roads. The screams of small folk carried to every corner, and soon the ravens told the tale. Tywin Lannister was marching not only to free his son, but to make war upon any who stood with Stark. At River Run, Lord Hoster Tully raged at the news. His banners rose, and the River Lords swore blood-oath vengeance upon the lions. In Winterfell, Robb Stark received his grandfather's call for aid. The Lannisters march unchecked. They will crush the Riverlands unless we answer. Robb's hand shook slightly as he gripped the Raven Scroll, but his voice was steady when he spoke to the assembled lords. Then we march. The North rides to war. The hall thundered with approval, swords striking shields, the howls of wolves echoing against stone. In the Reach, Renly Baratheon wasted no time. With the Tyrell host at his back, he crowned himself. Before a sea of lords and knights, Margaery standing radiant at his side. I am Renly of House Baratheon, first of my name, King of the Andals and the First Men. His words were met with cheers, roses strewn at his feet. In truth, it was not law that crowned him, but love. The Reach adored him. The Stormlands bent to him, and his army swelled to numbers that dwarfed even Tywin's. At Dragonstone, Stannis read the news of his brother's treachery with cold fury. He makes himself king while Robert rots in chains. He spits on law, spits on blood. Very well. Let the pretender enjoy his roses. I will bring him fire and steel, and when he burns, all men will know who is king. His fleet was near completion, his eyes fixed on King's Landing like a hawk upon prey. And in King's Landing itself, the city bled. Bread riots turned to slaughter as gold cloaks abandoned their posts for coin. The small folk muttered that kings fell like leaves in autumn, Robert caged, Renly crowned, Stannis stirring. Some whispered that only the dragons could save them now, the true kings across the sea. Ned Stark stood in the throne room day after day, torn between choices that grew darker with each dawn. He had caged Robert, but what now? To leave the throne empty was to invite chaos. To crown Renly would be to betray law. To crown Stannis would be to plunge the city into his iron rule and risk open war with the Reach. One evening, Varys drifted to his side like a shadow. "You must choose, my lord. The lords grow restless, the city hungrier by the day. Stannis waits for your word, Renly gathers his roses, Tywin sharpens his claws. Delay any longer, and the realm will choose for you, and it will not be kind." Ned turned his face away. "I swore to uphold the law. Stannis is the rightful heir. The throne is his by blood." Baelish appeared at his other shoulder, smirking. "And yet, lawful kings make poor rulers. Ask Stannis to smile and you will be waiting until the wall melts. Renly, however, has the hearts of the people. With him, you might guide the realm. With Stannis, you will be cast aside the moment your usefulness ends. Tell me, Stark, do you wish to be remembered as the man who saved the realm, or the one who let it drown in law?" Ned clenched his fists. "I am no usurper. Stannis is the heir, and I will not betray that." The council chamber exploded into shouts when Ned announced his decision the following day. Stannis Baratheon was to be crowned, and ravens sent to every corner of the realm to summon lords to King's Landing. Cersei stood, her face pale with rage. "You would hand the throne to that cold snake? You betray Robert, you betray Joffrey, and you betray the realm. You will rue this, Stark." She swept from the hall, her guards close behind. Baelish only smiled. "So be it," he whispered, though his eyes glittered with schemes. And in the dark below, Robert Baratheon laughed when he heard the news. "Stannis! Ha! My sour brother. As king, the realm will curse his name before the year is out. You've doomed us, Ned. Doomed us all." But it was not Robert's voice that echoed most across the realm. It was Tywin's roar, carried by his banners, his armies burning deeper into the riverlands. War had begun in truth, and the first of many crowns had been set upon the wrong head. The day Stannis Baratheon entered King's Landing, the city felt colder than it had in living memory. The harbor bristled with his fleet, black sails blotting out the horizon, warships rowed by men who did not smile, did not sing, did not laugh. The dockside crowds fell silent as Stannis himself disembarked, his grim face set like iron, his golden crown plain and unadorned. No cheers greeted him, only the shuffle of feet and the muttered curses of small folk who already longed for Robert's boisterous voice and open hand. Ned Stark stood on the steps of the Red Keep to meet him. The two men clasped hands briefly, neither yielding, their words as clipped as steel striking stone. "The law is clear," Stannis said. "Robert is unfit, his bastards false. The throne is mine." "It is," Ned answered, though even he felt the chill in his stomach as he looked into Stannis's hard eyes. "But the realm does not love you. You will need more than law to hold it." "Then I will give them fear," Stannis said flatly. "Fear is more reliable than love." That night Stannis sat the Iron Throne for the first time. The sight of him upon it, rigid, joyless, his crown plain as a soldier's helm, did not fill the lords with hope, but it filled them with inevitability. The law had spoken, and the wolf had enforced it. Yet already war closed in from every side. Tywin Lannister's fury could not be quenched. His armies carved through the riverlands with fire and sword. Sir Gregor Clegane led raids that turned towns to ash, his monstrous laughter echoing across blackened fields. Refugees poured into River Run, their stories painting the Lannisters as beasts beyond reason. Oster Tully called for aid, his banners straining to hold against the tide, but Tywin's might was relentless, and soon the rivers themselves seemed to run red. In the Reach, Renly's host grew vast, 50,000 men beneath green and gold. Banners, their knights glittering like sunlight on steel. As he marched northward, flowers scattered in his path, maidens cheered, and lords flocked to his cause. Where Stannis brought fear, Renly brought love, and with love came numbers. His letters reached King's Landing swiftly. "Bend the knee, brother, and I will forgive. Rule beside me, and the realm will prosper." But Stannis only sneered. "He plays at king with roses and pageants. A crown is not won with smiles. When he comes, I will break him." Ned listened to. The brothers feud with dread. Each raven carried darker tidings, lords splitting their banners, small folk starving, roads turned to battlefields. Even the Wall sent word that rangers were disappearing, their corpses found frozen and pale-eyed. Yet here in the south, no one listened. All eyes were fixed upon crowns while winter crept closer with every dawn. Inside the Red Keep, the cells grew restless. Robert's booming laughter still echoed in the stones, mocking, defiant. He sang bawdy songs in chains, called the guards cowards, and shouted insults at Stannis during his councils. "Look at you, brother, king at last, but the people would sooner kiss my arse than your hand. You'll sit that throne till your arse rots, and no man will love you for it." Beside him, Jaime Lannister was quieter, but no less dangerous. "You think you've won, Stark," he whispered to the guards. "But the game is not played with swords and chains. My father is moving, my sister plots, and when the lions roar, you will all remember that wolves bleed like any other beast." And indeed, Cersei had not been idle. Though Robert was chained, her claws stretched far. Whispers spread of hidden caches of wildfire, of gold cloaks bought with Lannister coin, of plots to free her son Joffrey and crown him in defiance of both Baratheon brothers. In the dark, she whispered to Pycelle and Baelish alike, sowing doubt, promising gold, dangling, power. The realm itself fractured further. The Vale, ruled by Lysa Arryn, closed its gates, refusing all sides. "No blood of the Vale shall spill in this madness," she declared, though her isolation only deepened the chaos. In dawn, Prince Doran Martell watched with silent patience, his anger at Elia's murder still festering, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And across the narrow sea, the whispers of dragons stirred louder. Viserys Targaryen was dead, burned by molten gold, but Daenerys lived, her name carried by traders and sailors. Some said she had birthed dragons from fire itself. To a realm tearing itself apart, even distant rumors were enough to unsettle hearts. In King's Landing, Ned Stark stood once more before the throne. Stannis sat it, unbending, unyielding, already drafting decrees that punished lords who hesitated. Renly's banners crept north, Tywin's burned the riverlands, and still Robert roared in his cell. Varys's voice coiled in Ned's ear like smoke. "You have chosen law, my lord. Yet law is a fragile sword against love and fear. Tell me, when the storm breaks from all sides, will the wolf still stand, or will you and your king be swept away like sand before the tide?" Ned said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. The storm had broken, and winter was not far behind. The first great clash of the brothers came not at King's Landing, but upon the fields of Storm's End. Renly Baratheon had marched with 50,000 beneath the banners of the Reach and Stormlands, his host glittering with knights, bright armor polished to blind in sunlight. Roses were scattered along the roads where he passed, maidens sang his name, and even hardened soldiers smiled when their young king waved. Renly was not feared, he was adored. Stannis met him with far fewer. His host was lean, his fleet still, building his knight's dower. The men of Dragonstone marched not for love but for law, their discipline harsh, their loyalty iron-bound. When Renly's scouts saw the size of their enemy, they laughed. "Is this all he brings against us?" they said, mocking the plain banners, the worn armor, the silent ranks. But Stannis did not flinch. "Numbers win battles, not wars," he told his captains. "We fight with discipline, with fire, with the righteousness of law. Renly plays at pageantry. I will show him the truth of crowns." Yet fate had other plans. On the morning of battle, a mist rolled thick across the field, swallowing banners and muffling horns. Men whispered of sorcery, of shadows slithering through the fog. And when the sun rose weakly through the haze, Renly Baratheon was found in his tent, his throat slit, his crown dark with blood. Chaos erupted. The Reach Lords howled treachery, some swearing vengeance, others scattering like startled deer. Rumors spread that Stannis had summoned a shadow from hell to slay his brother, a demon born of fire and darkness. Whether true or not, it did not matter. The roses wilted, the army crumbled. By dusk, half of Renly's host had bent the knee. To Stannis, the other half fled back to Highgarden in grief and rage. When word reached King's Landing, the court shook. Some whispered that Stannis had gained 1,000 swords in one day, others that he had damned his soul for victory. Margaery Tyrell was sent back to her family, widowed before her bed had even grown cold. And the Reach began to seethe. Their pride stung, their banners uncertain. In the Riverlands, Tywin Lannister's war raged hotter than ever. His banners swept from Harrenhal to the Trident, burning as they went. The Riverlords, though brave, could not match his discipline or his numbers. At Riverrun, Hoster Tully lay sick in bed, and Catelyn Stark begged her bannermen to hold fast until Robb marched south. And Robb was marching. The young wolf crossed the neck with 20,000 Northmen, his banner a dire wolf on grey. The songs already named him king in the north, though he had claimed no such crown. He rode for his mother's house, for vengeance upon the lions who bled the Riverlands. His direwolf Grey Wind loped at his side, snapping and snarling as if tasting battle already. In King's Landing, the tension coiled tighter with every raven. Stannis had doubled his strength. Tywin's fury burned unchecked, and the North was on the march. Ned Stark felt the realm closing in like jaws around his throat. Even worse, the city itself was turning restless. The small folk rioted when bread ran thin, tearing bakers from their stalls. Goldcloaks deserted their posts for bribes, some swearing fealty to Cersei, others to Stannis. Ned had Robert moved deeper into the dungeons, fearing the mob might storm his cell. "You see it now, don't you, Ned?" Robert sneered when told of Renly's death. "Stannis will burn the realm for his crown. Renly's blood is proof enough. And what of Tywin? He won't stop till he's crushed your Riverlords and marched on this city. Let me loose. Give me my hammer and I'll drive them all before me like cattle." Ned shook his head, though his heart quaked. "Your reign is over, Robert. The realm needs more than your hammer now. It needs law." Robert spat at his feet. "Law? Law doesn't win wars. Men do. You'll see it soon enough when you're precious. Law is drowned in blood." Jaime, chained in the next cell, laughed at Robert's words. "A wolf with 2 lions and 2 stags in chains. It makes for a fine tale. But tell me, Stark, when all sides come for you, who will stand with the wolf? Or will you die alone, gnawed apart by every beast that smells blood?" And still the realm bled. From Dawn came whispers that Oberyn Martell prepared spears, eager for vengeance against both lions and wolves. From across the sea, sailors brought tales of dragons hatching in the far east, and in the north, beyond the wall, wildlings gathered, in numbers not seen in generations, though few cared to hear it. In the throne room, Stannis ruled with a fist of iron, punishing deserters, raising new levies, planning for the wars to come. But even as he sat the Iron Throne, his crown plain upon his brow, it was Ned Stark who bore the weight. Every raven, every scream from the city streets, every whisper of treachery pressed upon him, and deep in his heart, the Warden of the North knew what even his honor could not deny. He had caged the stag, but in doing so, he had set the whole realm ablaze. The bells of King's Landing rang not in celebration, but in warning. From the ramparts of the Red Keep, Ned Stark watched the horizon darken with banners. The storm had broken at last. To the west, Tywin Lannister's host marched like a golden tide, 20,000 strong, their armor flashing in the sun, their standards crimson and proud. To the south, the remnants of Renly's men rallied to Highgarden, whispering vengeance for their slain king. To the east, Stannis' fleet waited in Blackwater Bay, sails furled, ships bristling with soldiers and catapults. And from the north, word came swift. Robb Stark had crossed the Twins, his army of wolves tearing through Lannister scouts, his howl echoing over the riverlands. The realm itself converged upon the capital, and in its heart sat a man who had never sought crowns, yet found himself their keeper. Inside the Red Keep, Stannis held counsel, his jaw tight, his voice hard as the steel throne beneath him. Tywin comes for his son. The North comes for their kin. The Reach mourns Renly and waits to strike. We cannot hold against them all. We must break one before the others close. His eyes turned to Ned. The North will listen to you. Call your son. Back, bid him bend the knee. If he joins us, the wolves may yet save this city. But Ned shook his head, his face a mask of stone. Robb is his own man now. He marches for family, for vengeance. I cannot call him back, nor would I. He fights with honor, as I taught him. Stannis' lips curled. Honor again. Honor will drown us both. Meanwhile, in the dungeons below, Robert Baratheon still roared. Though his voice had grown hoarse with weeks of shouting, he had heard the bells and knew what they meant. This is the hour, Ned. Unchain me. Give me my hammer, and I'll smash Tywin Stannis, even the boy Robb if I must. The realm needs a king who fights, not one who hides behind parchment and law. Ned stood outside the bars, the torchlight painting his face in shadow. For the first time, his resolve faltered. He saw in Robert's eyes the same fire that had won a throne years ago, the same rage that had toppled a dynasty. The realm was collapsing, and though Robert had squandered his crown, perhaps only his hammer could hold back the storm. But before the choice could be made, the storm arrived. The clash began at dawn, when Tywin's vanguard met Robb Stark's outriders in the Riverlands. Wolves and lions tore into each other, the fields soaked red. Songs would later call it the Battle of the Two Kings, though neither Robb nor Tywin yet wore crowns. Robb's direwolf ripped knights from their saddles, northern steel cut through golden lions, and the young wolf won his first great victory. Tywin fell back, cursing, but his fury burned hotter than ever. In the south, the Reach stirred. Margaery. Tyrell returned to Highgarden veiled in black, a queen without a crown. The Tyrell lords sharpened their swords, swearing vengeance on Stannis for Renly's death. 50,000 roses prepared to march north once more, and this time they marched for blood. At sea, Stannis' fleet tightened around Blackwater Bay, his ships ready to choke the city into surrender. His men prepared for fire and steel, for a siege that would starve the capital until only Carrion was left. And inside King's Landing itself, the small folk rose. Hungry, furious, betrayed by kings and queens alike, they rioted in the streets, dragging knights from horses, tearing gold cloaks limb from limb. "Bread! Bread for the people!" they cried, even as corpses filled the gutters. The Red Keep's gates shuddered beneath their fists. In the throne room, Stannis clutched his sword, staring at Ned. "Release Robert and we are finished. He will rally the mob, rally the lords, and cast us both aside. Keep him caged, and we may yet endure." Ned's heart was torn. Robert was His brother in all but blood, the man he had followed to war, the man he had loved even as he despised what he had become. Could he truly let him rot while the realm burned? Or worse, hand him back his hammer and watch him turn the storm into a hurricane? The decision never came. On the third night of battle, fire consumed the city. Wildfire, loosed by Cersei's hidden alchemists, turned the Blackwater into a green inferno. Ships burned like candles. Men screamed as they drowned in flame, the bay itself boiling with death. Stannis' fleet shattered, his men consumed. The city shook with terror, the sky lit emerald. In the chaos, Robert's cell was thrown open, not by Ned, but by Lannister gold. Freed by Cersei's agents, the king staggered into the night, wild-eyed, half-mad with drink and fury. He seized a hammer from a fallen guard and bellowed into the smoke, "Robert lives! The true king lives!" The mob rallied to him, the small folk howling his name. For one final, terrible moment, Robert Baratheon was king again, crowned not by law nor love, but by fire and chaos. But it did not last. On the steps of the Sept of Baelor, Robert faced Stannis' men and fell. His skull caved by a spear before. He could even lift his hammer. The stag that had roared for a kingdom died in the dirt, his crown rolling into the flames. When the sun rose, the city was ash. Stannis lived, but his fleet was broken. Tywin's army still marched, Robb's wolves howled in victory, and the Reach swore vengeance. The throne stood, but it was empty once more. Ned Stark watched from the Red Keep, the smoke choking his lungs, the cries of the dead in his ears. He had caged the stag to save the realm, but all he had done was break it apart. And in the silence after, as ashes fell like snow, he finally whispered what honor had never let him say aloud. "Robert, I should never have put you in chains.